Welcome to this introduction to Vizpak Products for Blender. Vizpak Products is a material library that's designed for rapid visualization, and it contains a wide variety of common materials for you to use in your scenes. And the purpose of the library is twofold. First of all, it can save you an enormous amount of time that you don't have to spend trying to create complex materials. And secondly, it takes all of the guesswork out of parameters such as subsurface scattering or trying to find the correct color and reflectance for various types of metal. And all of the materials in Vizpak products are physically based and derived from measured data to be as accurate as possible. And this means, for instance, that all of the metals are going to be subtly different from one another. Nickel, for example, is going to have the slight yellow tint that you would expect to see with nickel, whereas platinum has a slight hint of purple in its reflection. And these colors are all derived from the correct IOR values for each respective metal. And that means that you can work in confidence with these materials, knowing that they're physically accurate and are going to look like their real-world counterparts. So now I'm going to switch into Blender and we'll take a look at just how quickly you can texture an entire scene using nothing but Vizpak products. So here I have a model of a record player that's being lit by an HDR image. And the only material that exists in the scene so far is the label on the LP. That's because that needs to be a bespoke texture. So I'm going to start with the shading of the record deck itself. So I'll select it in the 3D view. And the material I want to apply to this is going to be a varnished cherry wood. So I'm going to go up to File, Append, and now I need to locate my material library. So this is going to be dependent on where you've unzipped the files. I would suggest that you save that location in your favorites in the Blender file browser. So I'm just going to select that. And I'm going to select Vizpak Products Wood, double click on that. And then I need to locate the materials folder and double click on that. Now at this point, you can select the entire collection of materials by shift clicking and just importing all of these. Or you can just select individual materials to import. So I'm going to select cherry varnished and I'm going to hold the control key, and I'm also going to select the oak varnished, and I'm going to append both of these materials into my scene. Then I'm going to select the turntable geometry and I'm going to switch to the material tab, and I'm going to go to the material drop down here and I'm going to select the cherry varnished, and that applies the material to my object. Now, if I open this drop down once again and we take a look at the other material that's been imported, which is the oak varnished, you see it has this 0 next to it. And that means that it's not currently applied to any object in the scene, and it will be deleted once the scene is closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this material. And if I want it to remain persistent even when it's not applied to an object, I just need to check this box here. And that means it will not be deleted when I close the scene. So I'm going to reselect my cherry varnished, and I'll just do the same here as precaution. Now, with the cherry varnished material applied to my object, I'm going to just zoom out of the node view and I'm just going to pan over. There's a tiling node here on the left, which you can easily tweak if you want to, because it's connected to all of the maps. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase the tiling from 3 to 6, just to make the grain a bit finer. Next, I'd like to zoom out of the view a little bit. So I'm just going to make sure that camera to view is unchecked because I don't want to move the actual scene camera. And I'm just going to zoom out here in my viewport and select this object, which is the plane that the record player is sitting on. And with the object selected, I'm going to come back to the material drop down and I'm going to select my oak varnish material. And once again, I'm going to increase the tiling. Let's increase it to 10 this time to make the grain a lot finer. Then I'll zoom back in, and this time I'm actually going to rotate out of the camera view, and let's zoom in on this tone arm here. And let's select this piece at the top of the tone arm. So now I'm going to need a variety of different plastics to apply to different parts of the tone arm. So I'm going to return to File, Append, and this time I need to locate the plastics. So once again, I'm just going to click on the Vizpak Products folder in my favorites, and I'm going to locate the plastics Blender file. Let's double click on that. Let's double click on the materials, and I want to select the black plastic matte, the black plastic semi-glossy, and the black plastic semi-matte, and append all of these into my file. And I'm going to reselect this mesh here at the top of the tone arm, and let's go to the material drop down, and I'm going to apply the black plastic semi-glossy to this. Then I'm going to select the cartridge, and I'm going to apply the black plastic matte to that. And let's select this nut here behind cartridge assembly, and I'm going to apply the black plastic semi-matte to that. Now if I return to my 3D view and hit the 0 key on the numpad to return to my camera view once again, I'm going to quickly run cycles in the viewport so we have a clearer idea of what materials look like so far. And just to get a closer look, I'm going to zoom in on the plastics just applied to the tone arm so we can see them in more detail. And so what we have here is 3 subtly different plastics, and they all have a little bit of roughness variation built in. If you want to make it a little bit more subtle, you can simply decrease the contrast in the roughness map, and the way you do this is to select the mesh with the material applied and look for the roughness panel in the node editor, and let's just zoom in on the 2 values down here. And if I reduce the higher value to something a little bit lower, say 0.3, you'll see that the effect becomes considerably more subtle. In this case, I think this is a little bit too subtle, so I'm just going to increase it back to say 0.4. And now I'm going to switch back to my look dev view, and I'm going to take a look at these wires here. So in this case, I want a colored glossy plastic from the library. So let's go to File, Append once again. And this time I'm going to look for plastic glossy. Let's append that into the scene. We have to reselect the wires, and let's look for the material I've just added in the drop down, plastic glossy. Here it is, a nice red color. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to take a closer look at this nest of wires. And I'll hit the Tab key to enter into edit mode, and I'm going to switch into polygon selection mode. Now I'm going to head back over to the material properties, and I'm just going to rename my material to plastic glossy red. Then I'm going to duplicate that material, and I'm going to rename the duplicate to plastic glossy blue. Then I'm going to reselect the red plastic, and I'm going to add a second material into the object by clicking on this plus sign. And with that new material selected, I'm going to select plastic glossy blue from my drop down. And the first thing I'm going to need to do, of course, is to change the base color. So let's click on that and let's make it a nice bright blue. Then I'm going to select a polygon on this wire and hit Ctrl L to select the rest of the linked polygons. And I'm going to select my plastic glossy blue and click on Assign to assign that material to the selected geometry. And I'll do exactly the same thing here. And then I'm going to hit the Tab key to return to object mode, and let's zoom back out and take a look at the rest of the mesh. This arm geometry would look good with a nice brush metal, so let's go to File, Append once again. Once again, I'm going to click on my Vizpak Products folder in my favorites, and this time let's select the metals and go to the materials. And I'm going to scroll down to look at the brush steel. I'll locate the steel brush material and append that into the scene. Then I'm going to select this tone arm, and let's select the steel brushed material that I've just imported into the scene onto this mesh. Next, I'd like to apply a nice anisotropic metal to the platter. So once again, I'm going to go into File, Append, and this time it's going to be in the correct directory because it's the one I was using earlier. So I'll scroll down to the steel materials, and I'm going to look for steel anisotropic. Let's select the first one, append it. I'll select the platter geometry and then apply the newly imported material to it. So the brush metal and the anisotropic metal have got lots of maps that create interesting and realistic details on them. However, for less important objects, you might want to apply simpler materials. So I'm going to go to File, Append once again, and this time I'm just going to look for the steel simple semi-matte material, and I'm going to append that into the scene. Let's select these objects here, and then I'm going to locate the material I've just imported and apply it to them. So at this stage, I'm just going to pause the video while I populate the remaining details with materials from the library. And I've now finished applying the materials to the rest of the details in the scene, just using a combination of different steels and plastics, as well as the vinyl LP, which is one of the materials in the miscellaneous section of the library. So as you can see, by using VizPack Products for Blender, I've been able to texture this scene and get a really nice looking render in no time at all. The whole process takes about half an hour. And in the vast majority of cases, I've simply used the materials directly as they were. But if you need to tweak them to your taste, you always have that ability. So if you think these materials could be useful to you, please head on over to Gumroad and buy them. And as ever, thank you for your time, and thank you very much for watching.